Hello and welcome to another of my videos where we delve into yet more lies told by the disgraced Chief Constable Nick Adderley. In this episode, we're talking about his time at the Home Office. If you've read the recent article from Neil Wilby where he exposes Nick Adderley's lies about his achievements through an FOI that he did, and if you haven't then it's certainly worth a read, you may notice the musings from me at the bottom. I state that going through all of Nick Adderley's historical claims of glory is like rewatching your favourite movie, TV show or book. No matter how many times you watch it or read it, you still find new details you missed the first time round. If you're watching this, then you're already on the same page with me that you know Nick Adderley is a compulsive liar, so it will come as no shock to you learning that on listening to that infamous 2021 podcast again, yet another lie has emerged. It's at the point that so much has come out of that single podcast, I'm struggling to find any part of the entire hour where he's stringing a sentence together that doesn't have a lie woven into it. Before we do venture into the realms of Adderley's fantasies, let us ground ourselves with some facts in the shape of the FOI to the Home Office that I did earlier this year. You'll see this confirms Nick Adderley was only at the Home Office for 8 months, between February 2006 and October 2006. I already established in a previous written blog how he claimed to have been on secondment at the Home Office in 2002 during the Soham murders, which is wholly untrue. But just to save you cross-referencing everything like I've had to these last few months, I want to revisit that here so it's all in the same place for you and makes it easier for you to understand.
Yeah, of course. So I joined the police in 1992, in February of 1992, and I actually joined the Cheshire Constabulary.
So we've got him saying that he joined in 1992. This is probably about the only thing he says that is true. There was an article about his bravery in September 1997 where he, as a traffic PC, bizarrely attended a domestic and heroically disarmed a woman at the opportune moment where his colleagues were out of sight. The next article in 1998, where he received a bravery award for this, makes reference to him being newly promoted to sergeant. There's also an audio clip where Nick mentions that he worked as a sergeant for 6 years.
I then came out of custody after a couple of years. I'd been a patrol room sergeant, control room sergeant, custody sergeant, did all of that, was a sergeant, best rank still, I think, in the police service now, the most influential and important rank within the police service. I still believe that. And I stayed at that rank for 6 years or so.
This article from Blue Line Jobs in 2018 also makes reference to Adderley working as a PC and a sergeant for a combined total of 11 years. So from 1992, this takes us up to around 2003. Adderley claims he worked under Peter Fahey as his staff officer for 2 years, with a promotion to inspector.
So a gentleman by the name of Guy Hindle, who was currently, at that point, was the staff officer to Nigel Burgess, who was the chief at the time. And Guy said to me, Guy Hindle said to me that the new chief constable, Peter Fahey, wants a new staff officer, and I told him that you're it. But I worked for Sir Peter for 2 years, and
Peter Fahey joined Cheshire Police in late December 2002, as this article shows. This would make Adderley's start date around January 2003, so this all seems to stack up so far. This letter from May 2004 shows Adderley in exactly that role, so again, the timeline so far is all appearing to stack up. This is the point where all the time travel starts to set in. He claims he took up a secondment to the Home Office Police Standards Unit after 2 years of working for Fahey as his staff officer, so this would be early 2005. He also claimed he did this Home Office role for 2 years before returning to Cheshire as a Chief Inspector. Now this article of December 2006 does show him as a Chief Inspector in Cheshire.
So I did that for 2 years at the rank of Inspector, and after 2 years, I remember sitting down with Sir Peter and having the one-to-one, and I said, "What's next for me?" So he said, "I think that the next move for you should be either for HMIC, so Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, as it was at that time, or into the Police Standards Unit, which was a unit set up in the Home Office under the Labour government to look at the standards of performance of forces across the UK." And then a few weeks later, an advert came up, almost as if it was contrived, for the standards unit in the Home Office, and I applied and I got that job. So I went to the Home Office then as a temporary chief inspector. Yeah, chief inspector there. Then, after the secondment finished 2 years, I came back to Cheshire as a chief inspector and then started to lead the Five Forces merger, or the National Mergers Project, if you remember, there's Charles Clarke's days. I did that for a short while. Of course, that came to nothing because obviously the challenges that was presented.
Adderley was still staff officer to Peter Fahey in 2005, as this question and answer session Peter Fahey held on the 29th of January 2005 has Adderley mentioned as the point of contact if a member of the public wants to become a special constable. The secondment lasted for less than a year and didn't even cross over 2 different calendar years, yet he seems to have a huge desire to stretch this out to 2 years and cover up a large period of time. This might seem like a small error, but when questioned about when this was that it was the Home Office, he outrightly lies and said it was 2002, and this was before Fahey had even taken over at Cheshire.
And then a few weeks later, an advert came up, almost as if it was contrived, for the standards unit in the Home Office, and I applied and I got that job. So I went to the Home Office then as a temporary chief inspector.
So what year are we talking here?
So that would have been around 2002. And I will share one fascinating story whilst I was there. It was at the time when, very sadly, the 2 little girls in Cambridge who were murdered, Holly Wells and Jessica. And of course, there was the Police Reform Act had recently come in.
He then compounds this lie that he worked on the Soham murders by further talking about serving under David Blunkett as Home Secretary and having private one-to-one meetings with him. Blunkett was replaced as Home Secretary late in 2004, long before Adderley had took up that role at the Home Office.
There's been changes of government of colour, but actually seeing the workings of government firsthand and having one-to-ones with then David Blunkett as it was, and then having one-to-ones with Charles Clarke, who were the Home Secretaries at the time, and getting the briefings around all of that.
He then talks about how he led the Five Forces merger upon his return to Cheshire.
Yeah, chief inspector there. Then, after the secondment finished 2 years, I came back to Cheshire as a chief inspector and then started to lead the Five Forces merger, or the National Mergers Project, if you remember, there's Charles Clarke's days. I did that for a short while. Of course, that came to nothing because obviously the challenges that was presented, and then was promoted to superintendent in Cheshire too.
This is a very small, trivial lie, but again helps us to timeline up matters. The Five Forces merger was proposed by then Home Secretary Charles Clarke in and around February 2006, and it was formally reported in the media around March 2006, with confirmation this was going ahead despite opposition of several forces, as written notification was given to all forces by this date. On the 5th of May 2006, Charles Clarke was sacked as Home Secretary following some disastrous local election results and a cabinet reshuffle by Tony Blair. He was replaced by Dr. John Reid. So throughout May and June 2006, with John Reid as Home Secretary, the media covered how the Forces merger project was initially on hold, shelved, and then just finally scrapped due to opposition, with news articles of the 12th of July 2006 confirming this. This period of May to July 2006 was when Adderley was at the Home Office, so when he returned to Cheshire in October 2006, this project was long dead and it would be nothing he would have any involvement with, much less leading. He also makes no reference to ever working with nor meeting John Reid, yet despite being at the Home Office claiming he's met Charles Clarke and David Blunkett. This is all designed to confuse the timeline of where he was and when. This on its own is a minor lie, in the same way that he claimed he was the national lead for crime detection statistics. Stealing someone else's work as his own is at this stage par for the course with Adderley, as the man who will lie and cheat and claim he built his own house, proving he is incapable of opening his mouth without lies falling out. However, there is a lot more to unpack here if you start to put it all together. This was a clear effort to futz with the timeline of where he was and when, referencing large national events that police officers and staff would remember, quoting perfect details to insert himself into these events so people would naturally assume this is where he was at the time. Things are further compounded by Adderley's own blog stating how he worked up to the rank of superintendent in Cheshire and then left policing for 2 years, working at the Home Office, before then going to GMP. We already know from his own words he returned to Cheshire as a chief inspector after the Home Office stint and then got promoted to superintendent, not the other way around, so this is the first lie. He then also repeats on the blog how it was 2 years' length of time at the Home Office, which we now know is utterly false. He joined GMP around 2009-2010, as this article from Manchester Evening News in 2013 states. He is also trying to claim he was at the Home Office for 2 years prior, putting it somewhere between 2007 and 2009, something that is again false, but it's designed to confuse anyone trying to create a timeline to his background. All of these small lies help to confuse vetting checks, leading to numerous dead ends. A relevant example here is the same article where Nick claims he was born in Crumpsall Hospital. This is actually true, as we can see from his birth certificate in 1966. However, if you look back to a separate article from the same newspaper just 2 years prior, he was claiming he was born in Oldham. Now, I am no expert on Manchester, but I can find no evidence New Moston or Crumpsall were ever considered part of Oldham. However, knowing what we now know, this is far outdone by all the other lies in the article that he peddled that no one bothered to fact check at the time. The aim of all of these lies appears to be that by laying down so many false backgrounds, it makes it almost impossible to reconcile any information that he does give and tie up all the different records as actually being the same person, as any research keeps hitting dead ends and showing up nothing to contradict it, with the other records just assumed to be a different Nick Adderley, born elsewhere, to different parents. His own wedding certificates changing his father's name 3 different times is another great example, and something we'll be covering very shortly. Going back to the issue at hand, when you factor in that he tries to claim he was at the Home Office in 2002, inventing a huge lie that he was dealing with the Soham murders, then separately writes he was at the Home Office before joining GMP, circa 2008, and goes to great pains to claim he worked on the Five Forces merger, both lines are designed to deflect attention away from the real time he was at the Home Office in 2006. The further lie is how he's keen to try and extend his time at the Home Office, stretch it out to 2 years, to bookend his 2 years as Peter Fahey's staff officer that ends around January 2005. So if anyone did look into this a lot more deeply, such as what I'm doing, and question where he was during 2005, they would just think it was at the Home Office, because that was for 2 years. Much like how he claimed he was in the Navy for 10 years, to cover up how he was actually the landlord of the Houghton Arms, we are left wondering, what is the significance of 2005? And the burning question on everyone's lips is, where's Walter? Because if he was trying to claim he was at the Home Office when he was a serving and warranted police officer, being paid all throughout 2005, then what on earth is so bad during that time he's trying to cover it up and claim he was elsewhere? Now, I'll be completely honest with you here, unlike Nick Adderley, I'm not finding anything nefarious during 2005. Now, in actual fact, I'm not finding anything about Nick Adderley at Cheshire Police at all during that time. It's almost as if Nick was never there, serving as a police officer. So we have a missing year of service where we cannot find out where's Walter. Now, if there is a missing year of service, this may well have continued to be covered up with no one being any the wiser, were it not for Nick retiring in February 2023 due to the pension contribution threshold of 30 years being met and deductions from his salary still being made if he continued. The only problem there is that 2023 is 31 years after he joined the police, not 30. I put in an FOI to the Office of Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner in Northamptonshire, and they have been their usual evasive self, despite putting out press releases of why Nick had to retire, citing the pensions and the financial cost to the county, and the legal advice they got about this. They are now trying to claim his pension and tax affairs are private, refusing the FOI. Now, it might be nothing, But every press release about Adderley, they never mention his length of service, just that he joined in 1992. Now, by comparison, let's look at Thames Valley Police, the neighbouring force, where both members of their leadership team have their length of service clearly documented on the website. So in conclusion, what do we have? Lies from Nick Adderley, claiming he worked on two major news events of the Soham murders and the Five Forces merger that we know he didn't, to place himself in a different time to where he actually was. Written blogs and articles claiming he was at the Home Office years after he actually was, and stretching it out from 8 months to 2 years. Further confusing where he actually was and covering the period of a missing year. Nick retiring after 31 years, not the standard 30, for the express reason of the pension contributions, giving credence to the belief he has got a missing year of pension contributions. No matter how much scandal this man is involved in, and no matter how senior his friends are that have tried to cover anything up he was involved in, taxation and pension contributions are not something that could easily be retroactively fudged and amended to create the illusion of unbroken service. Now, when you factor in how his former CC, Jane Sawyers of Staffordshire Police, who apparently did his 2017 developed vetting, has recently deleted all of her social media accounts, this hints at something coming down the tracks that people are trying to distance themselves from Adderley about. You might think we should just let the IOPC carry out their investigation, as this will be thorough. But currently we're in the 9th month since this story of Adderley broke, and things are moving at a glacial pace, with over £110,000 in salary already having been paid to him, and him comfortably sitting, still getting 14 grand a month, with no sense of urgency by the IOPC. The IOPC themselves have also been dogged with scandal, with former Director General Michael Lockwood having to step down in 2022 due to being in court on charges of assaulting an underage girl in 1985 through to 1986. He strenuously denies these serious charges, and the case continues, so I'll be saying no more about that. However, had these events not come about, he could very well have been leading the Adderley investigation, given Adderley's senior rank. When you consider Nick Adderley's relationship with the truth and reality overall, his involvement in investigations where he has likely put people away, and the department now investigating him dogged with scandal, you are really not filled with any confidence in the system. This is a system designed to protect itself, hence why I have been working to expose the corruption at Northants Police ever since the rape I reported in 2015 was covered up and is still being covered up. But those are just my thoughts. Let me know in the comments below what you think and if you agree or even if you disagree. And if you did like this video, there's a button specifically for that. And please do consider subscribing to keep up to date with all the latest revelations as I publish them.